Okay, the first technical element that we need to get organized with this drop shot when we get that short ball is going to be, you got to be looking for it. You know, it's simple anticipation, but you've got to be able to kind of feel right here as you make contact. Let's say that, you know, this is the shot you're hitting. You're hitting a forehand, you're going cross court, and you can feel. I mean, you can feel, you know what, I've just really conked this forehand well. And you look up and, you know, it may have been that for whatever reason during the course of the match that your opponent here, you know, you might have played a few balls up the line, and maybe that's what they're thinking you're to do again. And you go ahead, pull the trigger, you go cross court, and now when you look up, you can instantly see that you've got your opponent stretched out. And you and I know that once you get stroke mechanics stretched out, they're not very good. And so right in here, you've got to be thinking there's a huge possibility that you're just about to get a short ball. I mean, what I do with this is I actually step inside the baseline. You know, I'm not playing against Novak where the chances maybe are not as good that, you know, a short ball is about to happen. But with the guys I play against, if I get them stretched out this far, I'm telling you, I'm looking for the short ball, number one. But number two, the chances are greater that I'm going to get it, so that I'm starting to get on top of the baseline, if not slightly inside it. And as soon as I see it right in here, I mean, you just know it's coming. You got to jump on this ball. I mean, you absolutely have to jump on it, and you cannot be thinking in here, gee, I wonder if I'll be getting a deep ball. Even if you're, you know, on the baseline here looking for the short ball or inside it, and your opponent floats it back, you know, you can step back and be fine. But, you know, element number one is anticipation. And you've got to start doing a much better job of recognizing from the moment you make contact, where you feel the ball coming off your racket, that there's a good chance that you might get your opponent stretched out. And that after you finish the stroke mechanics, you look up, and sure enough, there it is. I really want you looking and thinking that you're to be getting a short ball and getting ready for it. Okay, the second thing I want to get organized with this drop shot when you get a short ball is going to be your spacing away from the ball. And this is really crucial. You know, once you've done element number one, which is to anticipate that right here you're getting a short ball, one of the things I see all the time, and, you know, I mean, I get stretched out, you know, from time to time where I'm this player here, and I go ahead and kind of just, you know, chunk a short ball back. And, you know, it's not that uncommon where, you know, you see an opponent who just absolutely crowds this ball and gives themselves no, what I call spacing, you know, away from the ball, where they align themselves to the path of that incoming ball so that you could effectively play this shot. And, you know, this is what I mean here, where you've recognized you're getting a short ball. You got to work your feet. If you've already now committed you're going to play a forehand, you know, this looks like, what does this look like? Well, this looks like, you know, you're selling a big-time forehand approach. But if you don't get away from that ball and create space to where you can perform element number three, which you've already seen, element number three is that swing path. If you don't have the ball comfortably away from you, you know, away from your hip in here, if you've gotten too close to that ball, you know, or sometimes it's, you know, you're actually a little bit too far away from it, you just can't execute this shot. So, you know, number one is that you've gone ahead and anticipated, and now what you've done is you're moving your feet. And sometimes what happens is you're going to find that, you know what, I can't, or you can't get into position to execute this shot, so you'll choose to play something else depending on the spacing, the spatial distance away from the path of the ball that you've been able to create. But, element number 2 is a couple of things. Number 1 is creating the space with your feet and then setting up right here where it looks like you're going to go ahead and play the deep approach, and then you're just going to go ahead and kind of drop into a continental grip so that you can do element number 3, which is coming up, which is going to be that swing path. Okay, let's talk about the third element, the third technical element that we need to have on how to execute this drop shot approach. And I really do call it an approach because you really want to be able to come in behind it. But the third element is we're going to work on the swing path, kind of the shape of the swing. And the first thing you want to think about is volley technique, and that is the racket head is up above your wrist. You're not dropping it down below your wrist because you're gonna go more towards a continental grip and play slightly under the ball. You're gonna play a little bit of underspin. But the thing that I want you to notice on this is there's not a lot of backswing, so that you don't have a lot of racket speed coming in. You don't want a lot of racket speed on this. In fact, if you were going to choose here to play a forehand slice approach, you'd really have the same setup here, but you'd use your feet more to kind of come against the ball with this stroke, and that would drive the ball deeper. But since you're playing a drop volley, you're just coming under it. Your feet aren't going, quickly through the ball to where you get more power on it. And I want you to look at the finish. The finish is right here. I mean, this is not a long flowing stroke. It starts up, the racket head is not super far back. It's really almost to his side. I mean, this camera angle doesn't show us that, but I'm telling you, this racket is not way back behind his head. And same thing for you. You want to set the racket more to your side, again, above the wrist. And then as you play this, you just slowly come down and you stop the swing right there. I mean, the swing does not go past that point. So this is really, it feels much more like a volley. And, volleys, you may not sort of carve under it as much. You'll kind of get more of the backside. But what I want you to work on here is the finish. Just stopping the finish right in there so that you don't get too much spin, you don't get too much racket speed, and that you don't get too much depth on it. Okay, fundamental element technique number 4 is going to be, you've already anticipated. You've hit this good cross-court forehand. You've now felt the ball leaving your racket. You know it's a good shot. You look up, sure enough, you've got your opponent stretched out. You're now anticipating the short ball. Number 2 is great footwork. You're getting around the ball if this is what you play. I mean, it doesn't mean that you couldn't get this short ball and actually take it as a backhand slice approach here or a backhand slice approach here. But if you want to run around it and really sell big time, you know what? I'm going to spank a big forehand approach shot deep, and that's, element number 1. Number 2 is the footwork that you've done, and you've, created that spacing that you want. You eventually go to that continental grip. And then number 3 is going to be the swing path. Number 4 is going to be the placement. You've deciding right here, are you going to play the drop shot here or are you going to play the drop shot over here? And my general rule of thumb, most of the time, I'm going to force my opponent to have to run the longest distance to get to my drop shot. So in this case here, and just like we see with Roger, he forces Novak to run the longest distance possible to get to that. And that sort of ensures that in case the drop shot's not a winner, if it's not perfect, that if your opponent gets to it, that they're barely going to get to it and hopefully pop it up to you. You know, and this is really what you have to start kind of evaluating, which is going to be fundamental number 5, as to, you know, where do you go to after you play this shot. But, you know, in this fundamental number 4, most of the time, force your opponent to run the longest distance. And once you've established in your opponent's mind that, number 1, that you're going to be playing, or that you might play a drop shot, but number 2, that they're thinking, you know what, normally it goes the longest distance, you got to mix it in. And occasionally, once you show this and they start thinking, here comes that drop shot, you got to mix in this side here too, just so that you keep them unsettled, you keep them off balance, and you always keep them thinking about where you're going to play this next forehand drop shot approach. Okay, and the 5th and final element of executing this drop shot off of the short ball is really you have to kind of evaluate the quality of it. And you know as well as I do, you're not going to hit a winner each and every time you play this. You know, we see Fed hit a winner here. But, you know, the reality is that as you, let me take this back in here, as you play this shot, as it leaves your racket, you start to have to measure the quality of it. And the quality is going to be, is your opponent going to get to it, number 1? And if they do get to it, are they going to do one of 2 things? Are they barely going to get to it? And if that's the case, if you sense that your opponent's going to barely get to it, you really want to move in, because if they're going to get to it and just barely pop it up, the last thing you want to do with this is hit a great drop shot and then back up in here, and your opponent gets to it, and then their response is to drop shot you back. So your evaluation is going to be, yes, it's a good one, you're going to move in, and what I generally do is I settle in right around the service line, if not slightly in front of it, towards the side of the drop shot location. So I'm not going to get way over here, but I'm gonna shade just a hair off of the middle inside that service line. Now, if you play this shot and you sense that, you know what, it's not a great quality drop shot, you know, you can feel that it's either going to be deep in here or it's going to maybe bounce up high, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and back up, and I'm going to get back here. And, you know, I don't want you to freak out when I say this, but I don't go all the way back to the baseline. I get more in no man's land here. And really what I'm looking for is if my opponent's going to get to it and have an opportunity to really make a play to where they can kind of control either an up the line or a cross court or even a drop shot, I kind of want to get myself settled into kind of the middle of those 3 possibilities. And if I go too far back here in the baseline, it's really just too far back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to settle more back in here into no man's land, and I'm just going to try to out-quick whatever shot they play, whether it's here or whether it's there. I'm going to look for a ball where maybe if they get to it up here, I can play a cross court if they play it up the line winner passing shot, or I can play an up the line passing shot in here. Or if they play a drop shot, well, you know, now what I'm probably going to do is run in and most likely play a little lob over their backhand. But you need to tinker with this and experiment to really gauge the quality of your drop shot as to where you move to next. And that's really element number 5 that I want to get inside your head is once you play it, once you play those stroke mechanics, you know, where do you go to next, which is completely based on the quality of the drop shot.